So we've talked about settings and cameras, but now we're going to talk about lenses and selecting the correct lens for the correct job. Now, lenses come in two varieties. There are lenses that are called prime lenses and lenses that are called zoom lenses. Lenses have something on them called a focal length, which is measured in millimeters. The focal length is given as a number. So this lens I'm holding here is a zoom lens, and it runs from 70 to 180 millimeters. That's its focal length, which means it can move from 70 millimeters to 180 millimeters in focal length. A prime lens would have a fixed focal length. There's no ability to change it within the lens. Now, the higher the number for the focal length, the more zoomed in the lens is. So it brings something, the higher the magnification, it brings something from further away to larger in your frame. The lower the number, the wider the lens is. So a wide angle lens is a lens with a low aperture number. A zoom lens, a long focal length, or a tight lens, or a telephoto lens, all phrases that are used, is one with a high number, which allows you to see something from far away, close up, a higher level of magnification. Now, when you're choosing a lens, focal length is the prime thing that you are looking at. But you have the choice of choosing a zoom lens that covers the focal length that you want. So this lens, 70 to 180, say I wanted an 85 millimeter focal length, which is a traditional length used for portraiture. Or I could get an 85 millimeter fixed focal length called a prime lens. Now, the pros and the cons. A prime lens is generally, not always, is generally considered to be sharper than a zoom lens. The reason being, the focal length being kept exactly the same makes it easier to get the autofocus precise and get the optics exact for that focal length. When you're making a zoom lens, it has to be able to accommodate different ranges of focal length, different levels of zoom, which means there are more compromises to be made in the optical design, which means they're not as sharp, generally speaking. Of course, you can get excellent zoom lenses and terrible prime lenses, which will counteract each other. Now, a prime lens is also usually smaller than a zoom lens because it needs less glass in it in order to accommodate the range. Now, another thing to consider when you're selecting a lens is the widest aperture it can go to. So this lens has a wide aperture of f2.8, which is a fast or wide aperture lens for a zoom. But a prime lens, f2.8, wouldn't be considered that fast. It's not slow, but it's not that wide. You can get lenses that go to f1.4, f1.2, even f0.95. And remember, when we did the exposure triangle, the lower the number, the wider the aperture of the lens goes. Now, the wider the lens goes, the bigger the lens becomes in order to open right up, because the aperture is a calculation of focal length, which is why you get those weird numbers from f-stop. So when you're buying a lens, you will find that the lower the maximum f-stop, the lower the f number, the more expensive the lens becomes, the bigger the lens becomes, and the heavier the lens becomes. But it gives you advantages in that it allows you to gather more light. Remember, the bigger the number, the wider the lens is, more light comes in, which will allow you to use better shutter speeds in certain circumstances. And of course, it will increase your ability to blur backgrounds. Now, an f4 lens, for example, wouldn't go as wide as this, but it would be physically smaller, which has its own pros and cons. And if you were shooting landscapes, for example, and hiking up mountains, you're probably not going to be shooting at f2.8 anyway, so why not buy the f4, which would be cheaper, smaller, lighter. So I hope that's been a helpful basic explanation of lenses and what you're looking to buy. In the next video, we'll talk about selecting the appropriate focal length, so selecting the right lens.